quite frankly, I couldn't believe somebody gave me £5,000. So I was like, let's roll with it.
Wow.
Today we're speaking with Scott Davies. He started off as a bricklayer in Wales before a life-changing back injury ended his construction career. Where did bees come from then?
I just enjoyed keeping bees. There was no more to it than that. So I started by just literally knocking on doors down my street.
What was your pitch on the door? Knock, knock, Chris opens.
I got honey from 300 metres at the road.
It's pretty isn't it? You have to really want that honey with a crappy pitch like
I got
that.
some honey from my garden. Over the past 13 years, he's turned that 5,000 overdraft into a £50 million business. So the first year, 23,000. 24,000.
Take it away from me. And the great thing about bees, right, is they fly away. If you do it wrong, they literally up and leave, and you just watch £300 fly through the sky, and you go, oh, it was like half my stock.
His journey proves that with the right mindset, strategic patience, and raw determination, you can build something remarkable from nothing.
That time I was like, okay, I have to change something. I remember coming back from this show with my auntie, bless her. She's like, Scott, what are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna do? Is this the end? And then that 4th year is when we finally got a list in Holland & Barrett.
How'd you get into Holland & Barrett?
Oh, that's quite a cool story, actually.
So what was going through your mind when you realised that you could no longer be a bricklayer, as in your career effectively was over?
What was going through my mind was how the hell do I create myself a job? Because no one is willing to employ a guy that's got 3 GCSEs and a bricklaying MVQ level 2 in an office. So I frantically looked around for ideas to start a business to create my own job with minimal amounts of money.
And what were you considering at the time? Like, presumably building your business didn't just click as the thing immediately.
No, man, no. It's like ignorance is bliss in a lot of ways, right? So I had 3 business ideas, terrible business plans if you look back at them. One was dog walking and kenneling on my dad's small sheep farm, selling sports equipment on Amazon and eBay, and randomly the bees, right? But, you know, for context, I grew up in mid-Wales, I still live there, it's very rural, and I wanted to work outside. And I was reading about things during my sort of recovery on my back, and bees happened to be one of those things I was reading about and kind of got interested in that. And at the time I thought, honey's like, should be so much more exciting than what it is, right? So I was like, look at all these things these bees are doing, it should be so much more exciting. So from that, did some half-day courses with the Welsh government, half-day on accounting, half-day on marketing sort of thing, half-day on how to write a business plan. And this sort of ex-banker was giving me a sort of lesson on how to write a business plan, whipped one up, literally just walked down to the bank and said, any chance of a business account and an overdraft? She goes, you'll never sell that much honey, but here's a £5,000 overdraft. And quite frankly, I couldn't believe somebody gave me £5,000. So I was like, let's roll with it.
Wow. That's insane. What did you do with the £5,000?
You won't believe it. So I designed my entire brand and my website, bought my jars and the 4 beehives. It's quite interesting, the branding, right? I didn't even know what the word of brief was, right? It's literally, the context is ridiculous. So went to a local, Newtown's a population of about 14,000, right? Not huge, but there was a branding agency of sorts there. I went there and said, guys, got this idea. It's called Hilltop. And we want to kind of look like a bit like an Innocent Smoothie, get some bee facts out there, kind of be playful with it. They're like, dude, okay, that's going to cost this much. I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So they're like, I said, is there any other way you can do this that doesn't cost that much money? They were like, we'll give everybody 5 minutes at lunch to draw something. And I was like, I'll take it. And then from that was it, right? So I managed to design the whole brand, the website, everything, get my stock for 5K.
5K in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That is a great little, it's a really interesting response from them.
Yeah, but I think that's the kind of narrative I'll probably say for this whole thing of how I've worked with people that want to make you grow and help you grow, and kind of not the instant mentality going, I need more money. That wasn't the first thought that came into my mind. It was like, well, how do I do this without spending that?
How do you know that honey was the right thing? You had 3 options in front of you. Why did you pick honey?
Because I just enjoyed keeping bees. It was literally it. There was no more to it than that. There was no like, what's the size of the market? What kind of size of prize can we get? And all that. No analysis whatsoever. It was just like, I need to create myself a job. That's all I wanted to do, right? I had this sort of pre-convoluted idea that someday I'll find my wife and I'll have some kids and stuff. So I kind of definitely need to have a job that earns a decent amount of money. But that was pretty much the scope.
Wow. But as in you were already a beekeeper or what?
No. bricklayer, coal yard worker.
Yeah.
Dad wasn't into bees. Nobody else in my
Where do
family
bees
was.
come from then? I
Just started reading about it. Just started reading about
normal
them.
people don't go, or bees. Or bees.
Yeah, or bees.
It's quite amazing that. Isn't it?
Yeah, I want to know more about that.
When
What
you're like
happened with
literally
that?
like spend your 21st birthday lying on the floor because you can barely move because of the pain, people just give me books to read. So started reading about bees and insects and stuff like that.
Wow,
Kind of got hooked on that.
that's honestly unbelievable.
It's just
Like in the scope of what we're going to talk about, in the size of the company that you've built,
yeah.
to have like come across something that is clearly such a gap, but by chance of reading.
Yeah.
So talk to us about bees then. How does one go from reading a book about bees to building a business about bees?
So definitely not. So definitely we're not a beekeeping enterprise. We're a honey seller, right? Well, that's what we are now. But it's a great lesson in there on cash flow. So when I started growing the business, bees were my passion that I wanted to make, and right, that absolutely hell bent on getting like 300 beehives is considered a commercial beekeeping enterprise. And I was like, right, I'm definitely going to get there. But each beehive knocks you back for sort of £300 a time. And the great thing about bees, right, is they fly away. Right, it's not like a sheep in a field where you pen them in. If you do it wrong, they literally up and leave, and you just watch £300 fly through the sky, and you go, "Oh, it's like half my stock." So it was a huge learning curve on keeping bees, right? And I realised kind of early on I was a pretty crap beekeeper. In my defence, I was pretty crap.
What's a good beekeeper versus a bad
great
one?
beekeeping husbandry in terms of the way you manage them, stop them from swarming, good beehive location, picking the right moments to grow the beehives or amalgamate them, and all these different things. And quite frankly, I just didn't have the time and the patience, because I needed to create myself a job that paid quite quickly. And, you know, even my simple education, I knew that I needed to take a certain revenue to earn that wage. And the bees were taking so long to generate any sort of income, because it's not like you can just put them there and then, like a sheep or a cow, and kill them in 9 months' time and get your profit from it. You might have a really crap year. You might not make any honey. You might make quite a bit of honey. You don't really know. The bees might fly away. They die with a disease. The return was so slow. So a guy a beekeeper that still supplies us to this day actually said, "You'll be a beekeeper and sell honey in bulk, or you're a guy that buys honey in bulk and sells it in jars. You can't be both." And there was a time where I was like sort of 3 years into the business. And just the context, guys, like £5,000 overdraft, I started it. I've never taken any investment. First year, 24 grand sales, right? Second year, 84 grand. Third year, 230K. Still not making any money. Like still like no cash in my pocket. I was still paying myself like 2 grand a year at one point. And it was like that moment in time, he said, like, look, and I realized that actually the bees, my sort of constant demand to grow the beehives was taking all my cash, and they weren't yielding me cash back. So the emotional attachment to the bees was like, okay, I've got to stop that now. And I don't quit very often. I don't say no to things. I see it out. But at that time I was like, okay, I have to change something. And as soon as I flipped to going, okay, bees, no more investment in bees, all about the honey. And I found this whole new world of, I think the average age of a commercial beekeeper is like 63, 64. So all of a sudden I found all this huge group of people around the UK that just didn't really know how to market it, didn't really want to market it, couldn't be bothered with the shops and all that. They just wanted to keep their bees. So that's my gap, right? I found finally that there was a reason for me to exist, was actually to buy honey and market this honey for these guys and girls, right? So that was a huge turning point in the business of 3 years in.
So what you're stumbling, like, the luck that you stumbled on, so to speak,
Yeah.
was finding a community of people who weren't being served but had a need, but were kind of nonplussed about the need. Like,
They had the product,
cool.
but they didn't want to create demand for it, right?
Yeah.
They're not happening about it. So
because for them the joy was in the beekeeping itself.
Yes. Yeah. So then all of a sudden you found this sort of old school mentality around the beekeeping cooperative group that was existing at the time, and it wasn't servicing the needs of all their beekeepers and all their cooperative members. So all of a sudden this young lad comes along with absolutely no money and says, well, you can do things differently. And they're like, well, I don't know if we believe you. And then all you have to do is carve out some belief out of a couple of beekeepers, and then that showed them the way. And I probably rose the price of English honey across the country by about 25% for these beekeepers. So they were really happy with that.
Did you have much support, like, because that is a great business decision to be like, okay, I can now see that there is a sort of untapped supply here to meet a commercial demand? Like, did you have business advisors at the time? That was just like gut feel. The bees take too much time.
Yeah, like I kind of think as a sort of an entrepreneur, if I say the word, is like kind of I'm cautious until I see the gap, and then I'm like so bullish. It's like as soon as you see the opening, you just 2 feet in, right? As soon as it makes sense, you just go after it. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, this can definitely work. 100% focus on that. And up in that time, I was still sort of feeling around in the dark a little bit until that point.
How does this beekeeping space work then? Is it like door-to-door sales?
That's how I started, door-to-door sales. And like really introverted person, really introverted leader. My mum used to do my car insurance for me and stuff like that. So the thought of me going to sell honey scared me to death. But it was a necessity. I had to do it. So I built my courage up by just literally knocking on doors down my street. And, coming out in like sweats, just
With
like
honey jars.
Yeah, just when I first started, right?
Oh my God.
And then I finally mustered up the courage to go into town and sell to this sort of local veg shop who took like 4 jars off of me. And I was
Do
like,
people buy from door-to-door sales?
yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Because like, I'm
How much was a jar?
It was like a £5, £6, something like that. Sort of towards that 13 years ago. And like, I'm just keeping bees at the back of the garden. It's local honey. Like, yeah, I'll buy that. Run out of stock within the first month of my own little beehives I had, which wasn't many. So that's what sort of also prompted me to try and go on that quest of finding the source of honey right from the early doors. And that was quite interesting about honey as well, is that it's kind of its own worst enemy in a sense, where this whole thing around local honey and actually means that no one can really break out. So if like I'm in Powys, I go to Shropshire, I'm the enemy, right? It's producing really good honey from great beekeepers, everything. Like, I'm not touching your honey, you're not from Shropshire. Okay, but it's really good. And we're literally 7 miles on the road. It's like, no, you're not from Shropshire, go away. So they made it hard. That's what it kind of flagged to me, was how do I make this a national prospect? Because I'm not going to make a job by selling honey in Powys alone, right? But
how did you do that then? So you're taking the supply in from multiple different destinations.
Yeah. And then fought really hard against, like, you think of all the food festivals. Like at one point I was going to sort of 25 to 30 food festivals in a year. So most weekends I'd be on the road in my van just going to food festivals. And every single county I'd go to is going, is it local honey? No, it's from different beekeepers around the country and whatever else. Like, oh, right, okay. So you have a constant fight. And we found... But by doing that, it's great for customer research, right? You're talking to customers constantly every weekend, coming home beaten to death, to be honest with you, by the questions. But one of those things that I should probably talk about is we found another USP was the fact that we were raw honey. And that wasn't on my label to start off with. And people kept asking me, are you raw honey? Are you raw honey? And that was that.
What does that mean bridge. Comparatively for the layman like me?
So basically non-pasteurized honey. So basically straight from the beehive. I didn't know what it meant, to be honest with you, Dan. I didn't know what it meant. So I was like, what do you mean raw honey? And they're like, well, is it straight from the beehive? I was like, yeah, of course it's straight from the
honey?
Yeah, of course it's straight from the beehive. I haven't touched it. It's probably straight in the jar. Oh, okay. And that bridged the gap between the county mentality to, okay, this could become a national thing because it's actually raw and people get it. So again, it's sort of, it is luck. So again, it's trying to stay the staying power around long enough to get.
I mean, this doesn't sound like luck. This sounds like someone who, by force of will, sold their honey jars.
Yeah. And that was the 4th year in, right? And I'm struggling at this point, mate. I started Hilltop 22, 23. I'm like getting to mid to late 20s, still not paying to my name, still living with mum and dad, and bless them, they're feeding me, weren't asking me for any rent. I'm not the cheapest to feed. And and I remember coming back from this show with my auntie, bless her, Jill. She was like a massive champion of mine. We're just done the 3rd year, coming back from Conwy, pissing down with rain, typical Wales, in October. Spent 700 quid being there, took 800 quid, made absolutely no money. I was like, she's like, Scott, what are you gonna do? Right, what are you gonna do? Is this the end? Right, and I suppose how I started my business and what I said to my mum and dad was, I never really went to university, never really went to college. I went to college for a year to do bricklaying. Let's treat this as me going to university, right? Starting this business, right? And they're like, okay, great. So 3 years was my university, and I said to my auntie, like, right, 4th year is my master's degree, right? If this doesn't happen, we kill it. I'll kill it. And then that 4th year is when we finally got a listing in Holland Barrett, and it was they ordered my first, 2.5 years worth of honey sales in one order, and wow. that kind of just blew the doors off. And that's when I started to realize that we had something going on.
So when people see your story, and we were talking about it before, they'll probably see the 44 million a year headline. But so the first year, 23,000.
Yeah.
And that's selling
24,000.
24,000.
Take it away from me.
Yeah, it's a hard ground.
Yeah.
That is pretty much door-to-door and festival selling.
Yeah, literally just not knowing what the hell I was doing, right? Just
What
going
was
to
your pitch on the
farm
door?
shops.
Knock, Chris opens.
I got honey from 300 meters up the road. do you
You have to really want that honey with a crappy pitch like
I got
that.
some honey from my garden.
got some honey in my garden? Do you fancy some? They're like, yeah, okay, we'll give it a go.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it, really.
And so from year 1, 2, 3, you're still doing that. Year 4, you break into Holland & Barrett.
Yeah, so 234k was our third year.
Security compliance is one of those things that can silently derail your business. Not because it's impossible, but because most of us put it off until it becomes urgent. And by then, it's often too late. I want to tell you about Vanta because it fundamentally changed how our company handles compliance. They've built a system that automates preparing for SOC 2 and ISO 27001 certification, turning what used to be months of tedious work into a straightforward process. What makes Vanta different is that they understand this isn't just about checking boxes. It's about building trust with your customers while protecting your business. That's why over 8,000 companies, from two-person startups to major enterprises, rely on their platform. If you're growing your business and you know security compliance is something you need to address, visit vanta.com/secret leaders. They're offering $1,000 off your first year, and honestly, it's worth every penny just for the peace of mind. It's the solution you wish you'd found years ago. Use Vanta so you don't get slowed down by security paperwork and focus on what matters, growing your business. Visit vanta.com/secret leaders now and get $1,000 off your first year.
And then that went to 684. And then that was when we started to go, okay, I can employ someone, I get a little premises. And
How did you get into Holland & Barrett?
that's quite a cool story, actually. So, Specialty Fine Food Fair in the Excel in London. I think it was Excel. I can't remember what the other one is. Anyway, it's irrelevant. Welsh government help startups go to these shows, right? And I think my discounted rate was £400 per day, which was brutal for me. So I was like, I could afford one day. And it was on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right? And I picked the Tuesday. My entire stand was on my back. Got on the train from Newtown at 6:40 in the morning. Got into London, done London. Crushed some people on the tube because I had the big and full of my whole stand on my back, and they just went, I'm trying to get this map, going, where the hell am I going? And it finally turned up at there late, gutted that I was late. So I was like, an hour's gone already on my 400 quid. Pitched up on the, half a metre stand on the Welsh Government stand. And it's that awkward thing where everybody sort of passes it down by their midriff, right? So the eye contact's really bad because you're constantly looking at, I'm a desperate guy, right? I want some sales. I don't want to talk to students. And, but all the students hide their badges and stuff like that. So you're constantly trying to qualify who's coming up to your stand. Three girls come up to my stand, all the badges hidden. And I thought, for God's sake, all right, we'll just go through it. So I started tasting my honey, and we had like a cinnamon honey and a ginger honey and things like this. And we're like, this never really worked for us in our stores before. I said, what stores are those? And she said, I'm the product manager of Holland & Barrett. I'm the category buyer of Holland & Barrett. Whenever I went, oh my God, charm offensive, right? Just like, let's talk. And they were really interested in it. And I basically hung on to that inquiry for dear life. I went through 4 buyer changes, took 10 months. But I was like, I'm not letting this go. No, not a chance. And so by pure persistence, I managed to get the launch.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was it, really.
And
didn't know what barcode was, an out-of-case barcode, didn't know how to do any of this, how to scale up production. I had like 10 of my family and friends in this room, probably the size of this was my factory, labeling by hand, or I put my Christmas hat on, listen to Christmas music, just going for it.
It's actually, just to be, you make a physical product, we make a physical product at Heights. One of our biggest breakthroughs ever to this day came from going to the Excel.
Okay.
Going to vitamin and supplement, expo of some kind, really early on. The amount of entrepreneurs that ask me for advice, DM me, like all this kind of stuff. And, I've got this idea, I've got this, I've got that, and they just want you to solve their questions and ask for you. Like, I didn't know. I came from tech. I didn't know how to make a physical product. I didn't know how to make supplements. I just knew what I'd had and what worked or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had to go to so many expos. We still do.
Yeah.
but now go with the team. But like back in the day, Joel and I would go to the expos, and to this day, one of the most impactful people in our business, full stop. By complete coincidence, by speaking to so many people, we met the head buyer of this enormous conglomerate global company that make our capsules. And the only company that can make those capsules, basically, the inner and outer ones. That was just luck. And he's from Belgium and he was there, but whatever. If you don't go to these places physically and go to enough of them, so you spread your luck and spread your opportunity, you'll never meet the people that can change your life. You're not going to meet them in Wales. I wasn't going to meet them in London, just sitting at home at my mum's kitchen table. Correct. There is a time when you have to get out the building and go to the things where people are. And actually, I feel like expos and conferences and stuff, they kind of get a bad rep for being kind of lame or whatever else, but they are where people are going in your industry, and they are really important to change the face of your business.
Like literally 100%. Like you buy a ticket, and you're going to get lucky somewhere. And
to your point, you chose to say lucky, but you still went.
Yeah. And it's that whole thing just from growing this business now, from the networking, you just the chances of having that conversation with somebody who knows somebody else is just mad. It is mad, and it yields so much. And it's like, it might not even been in your train of thought, right?
You never went there going to think about Holland & Barrett?
No, definitely trying to pick up a couple of customers, but not who and specifics. But to this day, you still go to places, right, knowing that a conversation can lead somewhere, and many of the time it does.
You have to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I also think, like, when you're asked that advice, it's never just one thing that makes it work. Like, it's not just that you met Holland & Barrett. There's a million different moments in your business that, like, staying power is...
You're completely right. It's actually being the type of person who's going to get out of the building. I know, I guess, like, knowing that sometimes you need to be in the building, sometimes you need to be out of the building, but it's not necessarily 100% of one.
And when to double down on opportunities, right? And when it's, because you've only got so much energy, right? But sometimes you've got to, back yourself to certain things. It was so from Holland & Barrett, went into Tesco, and it's kind of the rest is history, as they say a little bit.
Yeah. And so when someone like Tesco picks you up, is that rollout, because that for the business must be in itself so challenging for the supply side.
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed about how I got into Tesco. Like, sort of just literally berated them a little bit, and I didn't have a pitch, I had nothing. I had 2 jars of honey, right? An English runny honey and an English set honey, and put it on the table, went to Tesco and I said, you have no British honey on your shelf. How about you take some? And they're like, we kind of agree, right? How about 500 stores? And I went, yes. And I had no idea how to do it, right? It's a much dumbed down version of Brewdog story, right? Saying yes first and then going and make a massive factory. Pretty much what we did on a smaller scale. So yes, great. 500 stores. That's my hard stop date. That's when it's got to happen by. And there's no better thing than a deadline to really make you pick your game up and really start working hard. So back home immediately, right? We've got an opportunity. We can see it. We know how we're going to execute this. Secondhand machinery, find a premises, find the employees, train them, all this stuff, right? I completely bootstrapped it, and we got it out the door, and worked with Tesco really hard since.
Bloody hell!
It's amazing going from almost a moment of what, like, all the signs are telling you to quit.
Yeah,
really, in your 3rd or 4th year.
Yeah.
That moment with Holland & Barrett, but what's the gap between there and Tesco then?
God, it wasn't much less than it would have been less than a year.
Yeah,
less than a year.
Amazing, isn't it? Just how quickly in business these things change.
Yeah,
so they do often come around year 4, 5, or 6.
Yeah, but also most people would have given up by then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but look, I had the blessing, right, of like the fact that I was still living at home with mum and dad. God knows, I got 3 kids and a wife now. There's no way in hell I could have done that right now.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's all about timing, right? But
that's when people often say, because I started my business at the same age, 21-ish, and people are like, "My God, you're so brave," and it's like, well, if I'm honest, like, it's not a bad age to start.
Time.
I mean, you've got
totally with you.
Student university loans often for people if you're going to university. You've got no responsibility. Like, now, I don't have kids. Hopefully I will. But like, even now, I think taking a big risk, I think way more about it now. Yeah. And it's proportionately way less risky now as well.
And look, risk, the downside was so low for me, right? 5 grand overdraft and time, right? That was it. Yeah. When everybody else is like in university or on the beer or whatever, I was just like, I've got to make this work. I've got to make this work. I've got to make this work. And the downside was I'd get to 26 and I would have had an attempt at starting a business, and some people would respect that, right? And then, I probably would get myself a job in an office finally. So the downside was like there wasn't one, But like, to your point about risk now, every calculated risk, it's like, I think the perceived thing about entrepreneurs is massive risk takers, right? And it's like, not so much. We protect the downside massively, and you never bet the house on anything. And as the noughts get bigger at the end, you definitely calculate them.
Right, it does depend on very much on your life circumstances. The chance.
Totally.
Same as you guys, started when I was younger, moved back in with my mum.
Yeah.
That's called like a very fortunate safety blanket.
Yeah.
That is just a safety net, rather. That is your opportunity to say, I'm betting on myself. You know, we were talking to Tom Carriage, same kind of thing. Like, lucky, he's just bet on himself time and time again. It's that sort of selfishness of, I don't have kids, I don't have a partner to worry about. I'm all in on this.
Yeah.
And you know, as the decades roll on, that's just not the opportunity that you have.
Yeah, everybody's dealt a different deck of cards, aren't they, right? And you play the cards that you're dealt at that given time, you know? It's not your fault you're in a certain situation, you're born into that situation, and you make the most of it, right? Yeah. You can't begrudge anybody that. In
a world of, obviously, you know, you're a listener of this show as well, so, as you know, a lot of the guests raise a lot of money and do big things.
Yeah.
You've done a very different path, right?
Yeah.
You've got a business approaching 50 million quid and it's 100% owned by you. You haven't raised any money. Why?
It's a great question, Dan. I don't know why. Why? I think.
Did you not know about fundraising? I would say that's probably quite normal as well.
No, 100%. Right. You think I'm tucked away up in mid Wales and not around money. Didn't understand how that whole world worked. I was probably a pretty crap storyteller, to be fair, to try and persuade people to give me any money anyway. But more to the point really is, like, I love the idea of, I look quite far ahead and go, if I can have a company turn over hundreds of millions of pounds with the free cash flow that I'm in complete control of, with no strings attached, how well can I deploy that, right? Instead of having somebody constantly knocking at me going, why are you going to do that? Why are you going to do that? How I need to give this money back to shareholders. So I love that ability, the thought of being in control of a massive business generating free cash flow to do whatever we want, however we want. Like that to me is super empowering.
Yeah.
And so just absolutely unwavering focus on that. And it's coming to fruition, right? It's coming to fruition. And now we're making nice money, and you can put it wherever you want, however you want, right? And work super fast. And all of a sudden I got the same mindset I did 10 years ago, but with loads more money behind me, so we can work even faster.
It's so, I mean, my first business was a bootstrap business, and I just feel like when you do that for such a long time, your way of thinking is, I don't necessarily need funding. And I have done a VC backed company since, and like that was completely different. Like we actually would waste loads of money on stuff.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to my point before, right? Is that when somebody says how much it costs, you go, oh, okay then. Yeah. Not going, oh, can we make that cheaper? How would you do that differently, right?
Yeah.
It's the instant thought. If you've got money, you may as well spend it.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you haven't, it makes you think differently. And I think going back to the whole point of why I've bootstrapped it, I think where I'd sort of flip it on its head and say, why did somebody need money, right? Because I always sort of push back on that, going, why do you need to raise, right? Because I worked with all my suppliers. I was like, right, I win, you win, right? How do we set this up in the terms? How do you help me sell more of your honey? And then but the conversations are really insightful. And then you can be really creative. And so when we started the business, I'm just like, why do I need money to buy stock? Well, if I work with my guys are going to sell me the stock and get terms on that, then I don't need the money. And that's my constant thought process was that. And we've got that all over the world now, where people want us to do well and they give us the terms to do well.
So you've mentioned a few times being like quite shy and quite introverted. Like, how does that square now with running 140 people?
I think leadership's quite interesting, right? The scales of leadership you've got to go through on those different levels of the business. And I've kind of become quite good at adapting myself to be what's needed at that moment in time. I think that's probably one of my little superpowers, is that I'm still deep down that person, but I'm having to be somebody different, and I'm all right with that, and I'm quite conscious about it. And I think introverted leaders make really good leaders because they're quite conscious about what's going on around them. And yeah, I kind of learned to be somebody different on every stage of growth. You know, we're up to 40, 50 million pounds now, and you've got really talented people in the room that know what they're doing, industry experts. And so you have to be a completely different leader than you were at probably the hardest time I found. I don't know about you, Dan, but like when I was sort of 10 to 15 million pounds was a really hard thing, because you're considered a bigger company, you consider you've got a bit of money, but you can't quite do all the things you want to do.
Well, and the stock stuff is the biggest problem there, because your cash flow is
smashed.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so I just had to be a different leader every sort of step of the way, really.
And so how did you, from that position of start with the £5,000 overdraft, bootstrap your way to getting into Holland & Barrett? Like, how did you compete against much bigger companies?
I think it was our total USP that got us into Holland & Barrett, realistically, with the whole raw honey thing. And I think we played the card of going, they needed somebody else. They needed somebody else in the room. And they needed us. The industry needed us. Right, so it wasn't really on how you're going to compete with these guys. It's like, thank God you're here.
Oh right,
right, because they weren't saying that, right? They're buyers, you got to interpret everything you can, right? But they're definitely going, this is a one trick pony category at the moment. There's one dominant player that owns the entire brand shelf, and they do all of our private label. So I'm the knight in shining armor, and I take the gun from your head on your negotiation rooms because now there's somebody else, right? And that's been us. That's who we are. We developed because we were allowed to be developed, and they needed us.
So you're like the challenger brand, essentially.
Yeah. And that was the market needed us, so I didn't have to compete really.
Do we talk about who the conglomerate massive brand is?
You don't have to name them, but
you want to just go to any supermarket and you'll see who the other guys are.
So it's not
and it really is one company.
Is it? Yeah. Who are now owned by a bigger company who own lots of other food products.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to ask. Like, who is the ultimate? You have to say the brand of the honey, but who is the ultimate company that owns it then?
Bain Capital, who own Value.
Bain Capital,
who own Value Foods.
Right. Okay.
Fine. Pretty sizable competition.
Yeah.
But I suppose for you, like you say, that is a huge blue ocean to go into if it is one competitor.
Yeah,
because all the retailers would want an option.
Yeah, it was like some small fragmented brands in the industry, right? But that we were the ones that were going with the minds of going, no, we want to be national, right? We weren't like apologetically kind of small. We were just like, no, we want to be big and we want to be in the room with you guys on all these conversations. So they were like, yeah, come on in.
So you're really talking about the nuts and bolts of how to execute a challenger brand strategy.
Without any money.
Without any money, yeah. Exactly. Well, what are you?
Yeah, how did you market it?
Like, what are your tips around this? Like, how did you do it?
So, the power. This is kind of contrary to what's going on in the world at the moment. Was we had our own factory, right? How many startup food brands do you know that have their own factory making their own products? There isn't an awful lot of them, right? So for us, it was going, okay, we don't have the marketing budget. No one knows who the hell we are. But we're definitely getting traction in retail. So the biggest job we can do is be the right price for consumers coming into the market. If we're higher price, but nobody knows us, it's a stretch, right? But the fact that we have our own factory, so our costs are low, and we only need to make this amount of money to actually constantly grow the business. So we actually don't need to try and be charging more than our competitor. So it's kind of a weird scenario because we've actually, you could be classed as devaluing the category by coming in underneath the market leader, but we flipped it on its head and said, well, actually, we'll just help the trade up from own label to us to then might lead the competitor, right? Because we just want honey to grow, right? We want the category to grow. And so therefore we want more people to spend money on honey and learn more about it. So we were like, right, okay, well, we'll just come in the middle. We'll tell everybody a bit more about honey. That's our passion. But yeah, we're cheaper. And then people expect you to be more expensive. But it's like, but all of our marketing is on pack and just being on shelf. That's us to do all of it on that. So that's how we kind of, what would normally be a food challenger startup brand is you're way more expensive. You go on a massive journey, telling everybody about it and whatever else like that, which we did. We knew as a commodity product, people are buying honey every day. So we were just like, okay, we can afford to be there. And then from that, get millions of shoppers who are now very much interested in buying Hilltop, and then talk to them about getting us above the market, right? So that's how we did it.
And in terms of were you doing any, were you doing any big marketing? Were you doing any TV? Were you doing any billboards?
You done any brand marketing?
Any influence?
This year we finally did some out of home campaign around the billboards around London and the whole shebang.
Was it good?
Yeah, it looked good. It looked good.
Yeah.
We sponsored ITV this morning. We've got some of that going on at the moment. So that's 13 years in for us to do that. Until that point, we didn't, the usual bit of Instagram, Facebook, and all that sort of stuff, but mostly on shelf.
Managing international money used to drive me crazy until I found Wise Business, the account for doing business in other currencies. I can hold money in different currencies and only convert when the rates are good. No more rushing to exchange at bad rates or losing money to outrageous fees. And my team handles all the payments themselves. I don't have to micromanage anything. They have their own logins, set their own limits, and I just keep an eye on things from my phone. One simple account lets you pay and get paid in over 40 currencies. No hidden fees, no marked up exchange rates, and it connects right away with your accounting software. Whether you're paying vendors or suppliers in Europe or you're getting paid from Australia, it's all easy. And that's what I love about Wise. It takes this complicated thing and makes it simple. Your money's always secure with 24/7 protection, and you can see exactly where everything is in real time. So, to learn more about how you can use Wise Business to save time, money, and stress, visit wise.com/business.
And so when researching, we saw that you've had like problems with actual product recall and how it's like nearly...
Yeah, that was brutal, man.
Can you tell us about that? So what is a product recall for those that don't know?
Basically, if your food is considered unsafe and they have to remove it from the shelves.
Wow.
That's pretty devastating. We're making a creamed honey product, which is like a softly whipped honey. And it's in a stainless steel tank, and by its nature, it's quite thick, so it doesn't go through any more filters. And the auger inside this tank just clipped the side of the tank and put like a tiny shard of stainless steel in the honey, and so small that the metal detector didn't pick it up. Right, so it's that small. And looking at the bottom of these jars, doing a tasting in the morning, and was like, the fuck is this at the bottom of this jar? And then all of a sudden we couldn't then on good conscience say when that thing started because it wasn't getting picked up.
Yeah.
So then that's when you start making the calls going, guys, we got this product out there, we don't know how long it's been out there, we don't know what's in it. And I mean, man, the retailers can just go to town on you with fines, and the cost for them of getting it out of store and training standards, environmental health, and everything else like that. And that was pretty much like the day I was like, yeah, this is done. This stupid product's gonna kill me off.
Yeah.
When it was such a small part of our sales as well.
What was the impact?
What was the impact? It was, at the time, it was quite devastating in terms of all that stock was thrown out. But we managed to work with retailers in terms of our size and our scope and said, look, it's kind of unreasonable to come and kill us off for this. But you get kind of a black mark against your name for that for the next 3 years. It's a bit like a prison sentence, really. And you get super checked by environmental health and things like that for quite a long time. But so it was just a great learning curve at the same time. But that moment in time, you're just like, this could be the end. They could go to town on us and that'd be the end of it.
What about revenue that year? Did it dip?
No.
How's that work?
Because it's like there's food recalls are going on literally every day that you wouldn't even know about, right? It's just one of those things that happen. So it was kind of, you see, when you think your whole world revolves around you, right? And so you see the press and it goes out in the Food Standards Agency and you see your honey on, then you think, oh my God, the whole world's looking at this list. And it's like, actually, well, I don't think I've looked at that list ever again since, right? So the sales...
It's not a list I'm checking regularly.
No, exactly, right? So yeah, we survived it and pushed on, really.
How, when you think about the business now, so 44 million a year selling honey, how big can the business get? Like, what's the scope and scale of...
The honey market in the UK, if you total the, like, sort of, there's a lot of food manufacturing, there's a lot of ingredients selling in honey, it's probably worth around 225 million, probably, UK.
Fuck me, you've got massive.
That's just the UK, right? And then...
But you are just UK at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So coming up to 50 million, you're like 25% of the market.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. No, it's good.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Are you eyeing
Literally a honey don.
Are you thinking about international?
Yeah. So we've got a shipment on the way to Australia at the moment. We've got UAE and Saudi, Hong Kong, and Sweden randomly for our hot honey. And we're just going to start trying in the USA this summer.
Wow.
What's
amazing?
Honey?
It's amazing. He owns 100% of the business, getting 44 million a year, just in the UK, with the whole international expansion coming.
Yeah. What is hot honey though?
It's just like a spicy honey.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so it's good on pizzas and chicken and stuff.
Fascinating. So that's the thing, because actually I was thinking on your point, all this international exposure, but there's also variations from like the usual honey as well, right? So like creating new customers.
Yeah. Just feels like you've got so much potential.
Yeah, and honey as an ingredient, right? It's massive. Like it's so much. It's a natural sugar, and there's still a lot of press around sugar. And I think there's a lot more education to be done on honey as well. The whole like ultra processed food things coming around the corner. I think honey's going to be a beneficiary of that as well.
100%.
So yeah, there's loads
like in
of
my
upside.
house, we literally like, no sugar at all ever other than honey.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We just replace it.
Brilliant.
I think it's quite common, but it's such a, it just seems so
For your
obvious.
listeners, you're eating Hilltop honey right down. Yeah.
Well, sorry, yeah.
Good
We got
luck.
rid of sugar and we replaced it with Hilltop honey.
Come on. that's
It's
it.
more that Hilltop is the brand that we choose versus like it had to be that one. You know, you just got in our household nice and
That's
early.
cool. That's good to know.
But it's true. I mean, it's such an interesting ingredient for that, isn't it?
I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, how do you think about it now? Because that's big business that you own that's got massive potential.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the entrepreneurs I know, I suppose not dissimilar to my story, is like got to a certain point, knew that it could go a lot further and sold it on the premise that it could go a lot further.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've ever thought about?
What Chris wants to know is, do you want to quit and play paddle with us? So deep down, we would love to know. Yeah,
Deep down, we'd love to know. I think like it's one of those sort of vanity things, and they're going, "Oh, I could sell it for this much," and you're like, "But then what? Right? Then what?" To me, if it's worth that, that means I have to go and spend that much money buying something similar. So I'm like, what if I just carry on growing it and then grow another business and another business? I've been told I'm quite German about it. Apparently, it's kind of a thing that Germans do, which they keep hold of the business and it becomes a family business. And to me, deep down in my core, that was what I started it for, was to become a family business. I got 3 kids with one on the way. I love the fact that they see me go out the door, go to work. They all got Hilltop merch everywhere. They talk about honey. They love it. And they get to come to the site and they see the factory and they see all that hard yards trod and they see you're still working hard. And yeah, of course I could sell Hilltop and retire and play paddleboard and be there every minute of the day. But I think it's going to send a better message to my kids, and I want them to show that I got to graft. And I think once it gets to a certain level, you got all these great people around you. So all it really needs is strategic direction, right? It's not a full-time gig anymore, because you're not the same guy that you were when you was 20 million quid and you can make pull all the levers, right? You just can't, it's physically impossible. So actually it gets to a point where I've been trying to make myself redundant the entire time I've been running Hilltop, right? That's my whole aim, was like, how can I make myself redundant as fast as possible? It's kind of one of those things, the carrot on the stick on the running machine. It doesn't really happen, but I have kind of executed that to a certain degree now, where on a Monday we'll have a strategic call, what's on everybody's minds, kind of box all that off. We've got the business plan, but we operate on a 1-page business plan, which is basically all the fundamentals of the business that work.
Sell honey.
Report, we sell honey,
Make
get
money.
margin,
Yeah.
make money, tick, right, we're all good. The chat's going up, yeah. And then
Nice and simple. Look after the bees.
but the leadership is you got to let people do this stuff, right? You can't just be like looking over their shoulder going, have you done it? Have you done it? It's like, give them the ability to go and do that. So now, it's all about trying to see how many more businesses I can own and run at the same time.
But with the brand Hilltop,
Yeah.
like the other option is you could obviously do Hilltop jam and Hilltop peanut butter and Hilltop all the different things.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised that isn't something.
Yeah,
that
it's definitely it's been a point that's been discussed, right? And how elastic is our brand across sweet spreads. It's one of those things where you can be obsessed about honeys, then how you translate that into a peanut butter or to a jam, and it kind of feels like you detract from your main audience going, well, hang on a minute, how can you be so obsessed about honey, but now you're also doing jam and peanut butter? So
I think to an extent you earn the right after so much focus over time.
Yeah, potentially, right? It's definitely a 100% on topic conversation we're having at the moment, and it's sort of one of those topics is how can we utilize honey as an ingredient? Look at Biscoff, right? Literally everywhere, and that is Biscoff. And then you think of Nutella and chocolate spread. When you go to have a crepe with Nutella, you don't say, can I have a crepe with chocolate spread?
Hazelnut spread.
Yeah. So you go, well, how do you get people to think Hilltop honey instead of just I'll have some honey with my breakfast? And I think that's another whole different kettle of fish, right, that we got to go after. And
it is interesting what you just said about Nutella, for example, that, there's some crazy stats, and I am
sugar in it.
broadly guessing them from memory, but like Ferrero, that's what they call it? Ferrero. Yeah, Ferrero, the Italian company. That family is one of the wealthiest in the world. They own the majority of that company. Their best-selling product is Nutella. Half of the hazelnuts in the world apparently go to Nutella.
It's crazy.
Like the numbers on that product and the brand of that one product, which is like one of the only things other than Coca-Cola I remember seeing everywhere in the world is Nutella in like shops.
Yeah.
That is just so fascinating to think that you could create a family dynasty company like they have out of nailing one product and just it being so synonymously popular.
That's the dream, right? It'd be awesome.
But it's like a creative endeavor, that, right?
Yeah. And it's a purpose, and it's like, well, okay, what's the challenge in honey, and how do you become that household name, right? It's infinitely difficult, but it's super interesting at the same time. So that, it's that when you're building a business, right, it's absolute focus, isn't it? And what you want to do is you want to detract and sort of become weaker in these areas when, like you said, most businesses that are successful, and you think about Red Bull and you think about Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all the different types of beer and Brewdog and things like that, they're just absolutely heroic with one product, really. The rest of it's just like noise and a bit of a sort of an angel ring around your head, sort of halo top effect, isn't it? We're going, well, we're thinking different about that brand, but really they're still buying the same product every single time. So yeah, so it's definitely a journey, and I think sort of typical to how I've grown the business, really. I've kind of open-ended in terms of our strategy. We have one, but we know it's not a straight line. So we go where it's the least challenging and the most reward, I suppose.
Yeah. But do you do stuff like have a innovation area where you are, you mentioned Bishop, I mentioned Nutella, do you have like just like throw some shit at the wall, some honey at the wall?
Yeah. So we have an MPD kitchen and a team there ready to try and do pretty much everything weird and wonderful with honey. And we looked at honey as bars, mead, different things you can do with honey, right? There's loads of different things you can do. But again, it's getting the right execution, the right timing, and for sure we're not finished with honey at the moment. So it's our main focus.
So we were talking before about new business endeavors that you're taking on personally.
Yeah. So
can you walk us through some of the newer business stuff that you're getting?
Yeah, of course. Like I think, like Dan alluded to before, I'm a big listener of the podcast, and most of the things are around startups and growth journeys, and no one really talks about turnaround projects. And I've always sort of fancied myself as a turnaround project, and so I bought a company called Patchwork Foods up in North Wales, pate company, and COVID came along and kind of just destroyed the business. Some of the leadership went as well in terms of a journey of founders, their health and family and all. So there was reasons why it got to where it was. So I bought that, and we're 9 months in trying to turn that place around. And then recently bought a bakery up in the northwest called Waterfields, 36 shops, big old bakery, trying to turn that 98-year-old business around at the moment.
Where is it?
Up in Lee by Manchester, the bakery.
What, as in all those shops are just in Lee?
Yeah, no, sorry, the bakery's in Lee, and then we have shops around sort of outskirts of Manchester, Bolton, Preston, Formby, outskirts of Liverpool, all that kind of northwest area. And
presumably all quite well known in those spaces.
Yeah, it's like 98-year-old business, right? And the bakery industry's been absolutely devastated by Greggs, I suppose, right? It's just absolutely hammering it home, isn't it? So it's quite an interesting proposition to go in and buy it and think about we could try and take those guys on, which we're gonna endeavour to do.
I think that at the moment, a good bakery in, I don't know, outside of London particularly, but they are selling incredibly expensive bread, and people are queuing out fucking door.
I know, it's mad. It's mad. Like,
Gales is absurd.
Yeah,
but I'd say
the numbers are
even above Gales. There's one like round the corner from me, and the lady who I live in. I'm not going to say where I live. I live in South London, and there's a bakery next to my house now, and every single morning, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's like rammed.
It's like the new coffee shop vibe.
Yeah, right? I told you about Don't Tell Dad in Queen's Park, where I am. That queue is literally around the corner in Queen's Park, and it's a bakery.
Yeah.
There's like 100 people in that queue to get bread.
So what's the vision for the business then?
It's a great question. Survival at the moment, and then post survival.
Sorry, he's thinking about stop talking about these fucking queues, guys. Just one customer would be happy. Yeah.
It's definitely to at the moment it's positioned to be sort of competing with Greggs, but it doesn't look better than Greggs. It's more expensive than Greggs. We want to take it at least covering north of England, 100 stores, the first sort of plan. Not super premium, not trying to go down that whole sort of continental bakery vibe, but
so not Gail's vibe.
Not quite, but in my own way, I think we'll be better than those guys anyway. To be honest, in a way, in our offerings and the products we make, we've got a back catalogue of 98 years of recipes, right? Yeah. It's an unbelievable like handmade stuff going on there, and we're just not talking about that in the same way that we should be. And that's what's quite interesting about turnarounds is like that whole culture, eat strategy for breakfast kind of thing. It is a culture shift in most turnaround businesses, and you don't know where everything is. You don't know who's telling you the truth and who's lying. Yeah. You don't know where all the costs are. Yep. You don't know anything about the product. So it's really, really harder than a startup.
I bought, when I ran my agency business, I bought another agency, and I would say it was one of the most challenging periods of my life because there was just problems that came out the woodwork non-stop. Like,
yeah, it weren't your problems, and now they are.
Yeah, more debt than they thought they had. Yeah. More debt than they'd told you.
Yeah.
When key staff leave immediately, they had so much information in their heads, and suddenly
you just got to. It's a bet on yourself, though, right? In terms of like you've got to believe that you can get through it. Like you can have the best business plan in the world, but generally a turnaround insinuates they might be running out of money. So you got to work really, really fast. And take absolute gut feel punches, and like you said, you put your sort of self in the hands of others because you don't know where things are, and if they do up and leave because they don't like the way the culture's going or they don't like the vision, you got a big problem.
Without kicking a guy whilst he's down, why did you do two without figuring out if you could do one?
Because it was just too good of an opportunity.
Right, as in, so the first one, the pate one, was like there's a bit of passion, there's curiosity, and you want to do it, and the second one comes up, and you're like, this is actually maybe not a good decision, but stupid to turn down. It's so
yeah. Sort of, that's that sort of vibe, really.
How do you find it then? How does a stupid opportunity like that come to you?
My business partner, Mike Bream, the guy who started Clipper Tea, he's been my sort of mentor at Hilltop for quite sort of 5 years. And so he's in those kind of circles, and it came across his desk and was like, do you want to be part of this sort of process? Cool. So we went to a process, we won that process, and then and here we are.
Wow.
Speaking of which, then you just mentioned obviously he's the founder of Clipper Tea and he was a mentor to you. So how did you find him, and how important do you think it's been to have an industry mentor like that?
Yeah, going back to your point about networking, Dan, and trade shows and things like that, like people have been trying to buy us for years, right? So most of the time I don't even take the conversation because it's just like it's a waste of my time. I need to focus on the business. But there's a BGF, British Growth Fund. Those guys were chatting to me, and they said, look, if we're not going to do anything, please God, just get somebody around you that knows what you do, knows what they're doing, right? And they introduced me to Mike, and I didn't know I was looking for Mike until I sort of saw that guy, to be fair, and started chatting to him, and we instantly, same sort of thing, grew up in London, started Clipper Tea when he was 21, bootstrapped it, sold it, completely just got it, and I was like, I need to have this guy around, right? So he's an absolute blessing. He's a great guy.
Unbelievable. So at the position you are now, I suppose, do you think you will be doing more buying businesses, investing businesses? Is that on the agenda for you now?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Have you done much investing or just like ownership positions?
No, not so much investing in startups. Just playing around with the pension pot and stuff. Nothing major.
Would you want to do that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we've got the free capital to do it.
Yeah.
But definitely prefer to be much more involved at the moment.
As in actually getting your hands.
He says for another year, in about a year, it'll be like, undo all of that.
Or it becomes successful and I come and tell you about the next one.
Yeah, all that.
I mean, you've done a lot of startup investing, but you're quite hands off with doing it.
Very.
Yeah. So you literally put the
I'm
money
deliberately
in.
the opposite. Yeah. I'm very much I'll put the money in, I'll support you. I had a couple of calls whilst I was in South Africa on holiday, and they were, people in bad places, and like let me see if I can help unscrew you. And I'm good in those situations. Like if you have a problem, come to me and I'll try and help you.
Yeah.
But it has to be a big problem. But don't ask me how to, I'm hiring a product manager or nothing operational at all.
Yeah.
I literally don't want to do it. And I'm really clear up front when I put the ticket in. Like, I will be your easiest investor, or if there's a crisis, you can call me, but don't ask me for help for other things. Like intros and stuff, fine. But otherwise, I've got almost 100. So like practically, how could I, right? And that was always my target.
Crazy, isn't it?
My target is get to 100 startup investments. But if you know that that's your strategy, you have to be clear at the front. Like, I can't help 100 people, and I don't intend to.
What's the success rate on that? Like,
low. Like, but that's kind of the point. There are 100, and the theory is 1 in 100 is like a massive hit. And I've probably got 2 or 3, I would say, that are looking like they're on the way.
Oh, awesome.
Well, one that's like on its way to being a unicorn that I was first took it in.
Wow.
But and that's the gamble.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. It's like
yeah.
you just want one, and if one does become a unicorn, then all of the other ones
return.
Yeah, they return in general, but it's a very specific strategy. The way you both tend to invest, or certainly you, is you do like a larger equity stake in a more sensible business that's likely to get a return.
Yeah.
Like an agency business is a good example. Like, are the people running it not fucking idiots?
Yeah.
Do they understand that they can make more money than they spend? And will they, in over 5 years, are they going to therefore exit if they carry on doing that?
I can't help getting involved. Is the honest truth.
Yeah.
Is that like I'll invest like normally quite sizable checks into companies, and then I will work with that company a lot for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And then at about 12 months, if they're good, I will start to step back.
Yeah, okay.
But like if you're putting 500 grand into a company, then you're probably you want to direction
100%.
You want to directionally move it. And then obviously nowadays I get to use my sort of audience, as it were, to like push them as well with that.
Yeah.
But I actually don't do much like smaller investing.
Yeah,
which is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. How are you managing that cultural shift in the big company that you just bought? Because there's a lot of people.
Yeah, the bakery's got like 350. I think they were glad for it. I think that a bit of direction, and I think. Again, you set the tone as soon as you walk in through the door. Again, you don't know anybody, you don't know who they are, why they are. Yeah. There's an element of due diligence, right? But you don't really know until you walk through the door, and then all of a sudden everything starts coming out, like you said, right? You find all the skeletons and all the closets and more. But to the point, it's been super, super clear. Like going back to my thing about one-page business plan, it's very much like a 100-day plan me and Mike created, and it's getting that top team straight away and going, this is the 100-day plan. Doesn't deviate from that. Super focused. We need pace. You set the tone, and then you're consistent with the tone, right? You're consistent. There is no let up, and then they get it, and that's how we're trying to do it anyway. We're quite
was day one quite literally walking in and saying, "Hi everyone, I'm your new boss."
Yeah, but not to that level because there's like 36 shops. So you can't be all the same place.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, how do you do that? You say walk in, but like our experience of walking in somewhere is you would do that, and yours is
when I bought an agency, it was like walking into a room and saying, "Hi, we've just bought it."
Yeah.
Whereas that's very different.
Yeah, no, it was very much like just in a boardroom with a handful of people, right? And you've got all these people that you need to communicate to. And that's just why then you start doing the letters and trying to get round, and we try and make a point of going around the factory, see them in the morning, shake hands, be around, getting involved in the process, right? Mike's been out on the delivery vans at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, getting out into the shops, being behind the till, figuring it out. And then the word spreads, right? Because what you got to realize is they hear the news that it's been bought, so everyone to know what's going on. So you're trying to control the jungle drums as well. So you try and put it out as much as you can.
You live in you live in Wales?
Yes, mid Wales, yeah.
Yeah, mid Wales.
Yeah.
And so you bought these places in
Manchester
northwest of England. So how does that interact with like your family life? You've got 3 kids and another like one coming on. Like, isn't that just like you're stretching yourself like crazy?
Yeah.
But how's that feel for you genuinely? Like, how much can you even be at home with those businesses?
I just go there for the hotel and a good night's sleep, to be honest with you. My wife's like literally a superstar, and she's handling it really well, and she knows that I need that and I want that, and she's super supportive of that as well. But at the same time, I'm super disciplined in sort of saying, I have to be there, take my kids to bed, feed my kids, take them to bed, was my kind of my absolute for when I was running Hilltop. And then when I bought Patchwork, it was very much, okay, managing expectations. I'm going to be a couple of months of really, really hard work, and then I should be back in the room again, fine. So again, I think it's working with your partner.
What about
and your
this
wife.
one? Because those two, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I'm mostly specifically interested in, you've made a conscious choice to buy, fundamentally, this is a complicated business. There's lots of physical stores in lots of different cities.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of travel.
Yeah.
And you've taken personal responsibility for it. And you don't sound like someone who doesn't take that stuff seriously. So what does that look like now?
It's great to share the burden with Mike, right? So he's there, he's physically there 4 days a week, which is like phenomenally different, right? If I did it on myself, there's no way in hell I was going to do that.
So is this your first proper experience of having actual 50-50
both
partner?
of us, right?
That's cool.
So he was like I said, a sole entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Wow.
And exited many years ago.
Yeah.
And I did raise that point with him as we were going into it. I was like, Mike, you do realize that we're both single founders and we're now co-founders, and we're going to find that really freaking difficult. And at the moment, it's a new way of working, right? Constantly checking in, just giving each other phone calls, constant updates, what we're finding out, and things like that. And so it's working really, really well. And very clear, like he's operational side of the business, I'm sales and marketing side of the business, and it's nice. It works. It works. It's a really nice experience actually than being on your own and just taking it all on.
It's interesting having the self-proclaimed introvert taking a responsibility side on a co-founder relationship of sales and marketing.
It is. Yeah, it is true. But it's a necessity, right? It's like what's needed.
Yeah. If you were to go back and talk to your 21, 22-year-old self who was selling honey door to door, what is like the key advice you would give yourself back then?
Oh, dude, I don't know. I hate this question because like, I'm kind of the guy with absolute no regrets, kind of like whatever you've done, you've learned from, right? And you can't rebuild that. So like, it's fine. If you need to make that decision, then you clearly processed it, made the wrong one, learn from it. So I honestly can't even give you a straight answer. I don't know what it would be. I honestly don't know what it would be.
It's funny as well, because I will often get asked a similar question to that. And I actually do think that entrepreneurship just sort of, the path will just reveal itself the more you work on the problem.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't think any of the businesses I've built were intended to be exactly as they were.
No.
They've just sort of come through often sheer willpower.
Yeah, look, Patrick's a great example, right? Where I was speaking to a customer the other day and it's like, it's become the business it needed to be, right? It wasn't like a forced plan. It was like, make the team open to change, an opportunity, and it just became the thing it needed to be. And I think, so I can't really give you a straight answer what I would tell myself, to be honest with you. I really wish I had a better answer than that.
You mentioned earlier, like, you bought this business in January. So it's really new. What does a face of a turnaround business look like? Is there a period of time that you have to get it working on operational and starting to turn over properly before it's a complete disaster? Or what does that look like, that landscape?
We got like 2 months, 2.5 months.
Right. Or what?
Or
runs out of money.
Yeah.
And what happens if it runs out of money? Have you got a
Some
plan?
tough conversations.
Have you both got a plan of like, well, this is how much we're willing to both put in if that happens?
There's been talks of that. There's been different ways, right? But we're kind of very much like plan A and make plan A work rather than, I think if you have 2-3 plans, you kind of give yourself an out of making the one not work. So it's absolutely resolute to the first plan working. And then going back to backing yourself, right? Me and Mike both know how to solve problems, and we're confident in our own ability to do that. So absolute plan A is to turn it around. There is no other option right now.
What does a turnaround look like in something that's just a bakery business? Like, is it new branding? Is there marketing, like locally? Like, what actually happens?
Yeah, no, it's like the whole pricing structure, your market fit, what you're trying to do, your culture, the team. They went through, I don't know if you guys ever been know about like a CVA, right? Where there's basically a prison sentence for a business when there's like, if you get out of it, you're lucky, and they managed to get through it. But they got through it by like all the middle management being ripped out. And it's like, so they got like sort of very much top, bottom. There is no sort of execution. There's no ability to execute. So it's just trying to go through that organizational plan. Have we got all the bums in the right seats on the right bus?
So they technically were basically in bankruptcy, right?
They were they were solvent, and they still are. We are still solvent, but the road wasn't looking all that right, and bless him, Richard, the owner, just sort of said that I just can't do this. I just can't do this anymore. It's like, okay, we'll give it a go.
It's an interesting lesson though. Like I think that there's a whole generation of people now who are probably getting to the end of their business careers, and they have businesses that have a huge amount of value. And young entrepreneurs, rather than starting a business, could look to buy into or own. They call them sort of like boomer businesses, but they are decent businesses. Like
there's loads. And we were chatting before we came in here. Actually, it's like, does it always need to be a startup, right? Because that's the instant thought. But it's like there's loads of businesses out there that they've got the experience, but they haven't got the energy anymore, right? And all of a sudden you've got the energy and not the experience. You match the two, and you can make a really good thing happen. Yeah. So it is a really interesting point.
Is it in general about this? I think it's so fascinating understanding energy. It is exactly that. It's what some people, some founders really do have the energy and foresight. Take Hilltop as an example. I'm thinking about it as a generational family business, whatever, which means to an extent you will always have the energy to think about it like that, even if it's about who's replacing in the meantime and how you're not involved in the day-to-day. Because that is your energy that you're putting into it. You already have that plan. For a lot of people, it's literally just about running energy and running out of energy, and being I'll do anything to not have to look after this next year or next week. But let's start with next year. So how do I get out of it? And you're right. People with fresh ideas and good energy would love to have gone through so many of the painful startup problems that exist, and also that have already been invested in so heavily.
A good trade as well. I've bought a fair few businesses in my life for different companies. We were often buying the companies from people who were 55, 60, had done it for 20 years, had accumulated loads of clients. Yeah, their pricing wasn't perfect. Their marketing wasn't amazing. They didn't have leverage points for other parts of the business, but they get to walk away with a good amount of money, and you get either a springboard into a new thing, or you pick up an insane amount more customers. Yeah. And so you could turn this business around. You will, and you will. Yeah. And I think a lot more people should consider, with Lottie, for example, the way we got our SaaS business to grow so quickly, we just bought 3 SaaS businesses. Yeah. And so we just bought 3 existing businesses that were out there, put them together. Eventually you sunset the products and you've got a much bigger business. And the people behind those businesses get to walk away with, a couple million quid.
Yeah. And they're happy because the one thing they didn't want to do is have to keep on going to work with the same grind of the thing that they don't have the energy for anymore. Yeah.
Definitely.
So what would your advice be for someone who has, $5,000, a fucked up back and a dream?
Oh my days! I think on hindsight, I think what you put a question before about what I told myself is definitely look at the market size, right, and look at the scope of the opportunity and go where can I fit? And I think with $5,000, it's so difficult, Dan, isn't it? Because it depends what industry you go in, right? I was in a situation where most of our product cost comes from honey, and we could work with those direct suppliers. So I think do your research and pick a lane. Really, I don't know how else to say it.
I think the advice in that space for that type of product, getting into retail, probably is felt like for you anyway was a big make or break moment.
That had to be it.
Yeah,
it had to be it for the scale. Otherwise, there was no business.
And so how do founders intentionally think about that? How do you get on the radar of retail?
God, mate, it's so many people get it wrong, right? And I think a lot of people go in there trying to sell their product instead of trying to figure out what they can do for the category and really what's helping that buyer as well. One of those things of trying to help, when you realize who you're selling to is your corporate person at the other end of it, right? And they've got a career and a ladder to climb, and they have certain KPIs within that to hit. So you're going, well, how can I help you? Right, this happens to be my product, and I think it tastes great and whatever, right? But it's by the by. It's how can we help this fit your model to make you more famous within your business or whatever else you want to call it? And I think that's the flip you got to do when you go into those things. Is going, well, this is all great. This is going to make sense. it makes sense for you and it makes sense for the category, and we have a clear role to play. And then and after that, it's quite easy, I think. But too many people go in there and go, my soup tastes great, taste it, tastes great. And it's like, yeah, but for what? So what? You know, how are we going to make this work? So understanding that mechanisms internally of the supermarkets is quite key.
What other categories do you think there actually are like honey? That, I know it's a bit of a weird question, but it's like it's actually a really interesting category. Everyone has honey. It's used as an ingredient and like a sweet and a topper, but like every home has honey.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever been to a home.
It's 50% household penetration honey, apparently.
Is it 50%?
Yeah, 50%. Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't have honey out of like 1 out of 2 people? That's nuts. But that's why I think it's just so popular.
Yeah,
it's the biggest street spread category. It's bigger than peanut butter, bigger than jam.
Globally, right?
Yeah, and in the UK, right, in the UK retail scene.
that's what I find so astounding. It's like, imagine how big that business can get.
Yes.
Yeah.
Globally.
Yeah.
Mental.
But are there really big brands like in the USA? Like, you know,
In honey?
Yeah.
Some pretty sizable brands. But again, it's quite dominant. It's quite a similar landscape to the UK, right? So we definitely got a role to play out there in the US, that for sure. But yeah, I think the whole what you were saying, Dan, about honey and peanut butter chocolate spread, and the way we're going with that one. The market's massive, and knowing your buyer is absolutely critical. And then the elasticity of our brand, like we talked about before, how far can it go? What can it be used as an ingredient? Sorry, your point was there's no other category like honey, right? And
or is there? And I don't know.
Is there? And I don't know. And I think one thing people won't know is that honey, and I'm still looking for this question. That'd be great if somebody can send you an answer. Is that honey crystallizes, right? But it hasn't gone off. So it's still legal to buy it. The shelf life is 2-3 years. As packers, if you get that wrong and it goes on the shelf, crystallized, nobody buys it. But it's not a product recall, and it's not an end of life, so the supermarket shouldn't take it off the shelf. There's no other category I can think of where you've got a product that's perfectly fit for human consumption that no one will buy because it looks different than when it left the factory. And that's quite a unique challenge for us, right? Because when it leaves the factory with heights, you put those pills in a jar and it's gone out, and that's fine. You haven't got to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
When it leaves our factory, we're constantly hoping to God that it stays running long enough for people to buy it, right? And we've got that nailed down. But in the early days, you'd be sending out perfectly fine product and people would phone you up 3 weeks later going, all my stock's crystallized, can't sell it.
Why does that happen?
Take it all back.
Blimey.
It's the way you pack it on the grade of honey and things like that. It's all different type manner of things, really. That took me a bloody long time to figure out. And but yeah, and the other quite interesting thing with honey is that the two brands, us and the other leading brands, we do every single pricing tier. I can't think of any other category like that, where we do from the cheapest market entry product all the way to the top.
Yeah, like your Louis Vuitton and your Primark.
Yeah, there's no clear, the pricing in those clear tiers, but as a brand, there's no like good, better, best tier in. It's just like we do all of it.
Wow.
And again, I can't think of another category like that.
At the beginning, you would have known that you wanted to effectively make a product that could go into supermarkets. When you're at those festivals, like at that point in time, does that feel like slightly delusional thinking that your product is going to make it into the supermarket?
100% delusional, mate. Yeah, it's like, how in God's earth am I going to get in there? And the day it happened was just like absolutely surreal. And actually, it's not that difficult in terms of they're just human beings and there's a certain way of doing it. And like my sales pitch for the farm shop was the same thing to Tesco's, right? So they just got more stores. So it's the same concept. But yeah, 100%. It's like, this must be a whole new world. It's been like really clever people must do this.
Yeah.
And like, there's no way I can ever do that, but I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to find out all the reasons why I can't or why I can soon. And yeah, it was definitely like one of the most surreal moments I've ever had. Just seeing it on shelf. It's pretty cool.
Got a nice selfie.
Yeah. But I did I had a camera phone.
Do you think so? Take the kids to be like, look, it's, daddy's stuff.
Yeah, they love it, right? And we turn around all our competitors' stuff and push it to the back. And
even peanut butter and Nutella.
Just get it all gone. Yeah, no, they love it, man. They love it.
Amazing, dude. Thank you so much for joining us on
Thanks,
Secret
man.
Leaders and sharing the story.
Thank you.
Awesome.
What do you reckon makes a great leader?
Crikey, here's a quick one. I think
I didn't say you had to think about the answer quickly. You can think if you like.
What makes a great leader? I think clear direction, motivation when needed, knowing when to push, when to step back is absolutely critical. But I think most people get that small point wrong around what is it you're trying to do, and clearly what your expectations are of those people, and then coming back to them when it hasn't been met or it has been met, and celebrating the wins and talking about the bad things.
What makes a bad boss?
Yeah, I think like that whole looking over the shoulder, kind of setting the tone, but then still ask them why they haven't done it or why they've not done it their own way. I'm super easy on the fact that if they've done it a slightly different way, but they're still right at the same point, doesn't really care. But some people absolutely have it in their manner, in their way, and I think that's just really hard work to be around, isn't it? Where, you know, if you're paying me to do a job, let me do the bloody job. You know.
How are you looking after your health?
How am I looking after my health? This is probably one of my weakest failings. My biggest failing, I should say, as a person, is that just work and work and work between family and work, and I don't, right? And I have peaks and troughs of, I've got a Peloton, and 1 minute I'll be on the Peloton, the next minute I buy a bloody bakery, and then I all goes out the bloody window. So
buying a bakery can't be amazing for your health.
Yeah. It's not, mate. You're doing the whole product tasting. You got donut, you got steak bake, you got all these things.
Sounds amazing.
I know, it's awesome. It smells great. So yeah, they're not great at it, Dan, to be honest.
What's your one secret in business?
My one secret. Oh.
Or you could answer, what's your one secret that's led to your success?
One secret. I think my secret goes back to, I want to believe it's leadership, because I don't believe I've conducted anything sort of special. But I've had the ability to bring with me a super young team, a team that don't know what they're doing, being the right leader for them at the same time. You know, having those conversations with them. It's super hard when you've had such a loyal workforce and they're not going to be able to cut the mustard at 35, 40 million. So I think that's kind of been my little superpower, I suppose.
I'd say interviewing you, your staying power.
Staying power, resilience.
Yeah,
Just
relentless resilience.
Yeah.
Even in the face of, fucking challenge.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, I'll take that one.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
That's great.
Thank you. Cheers,
Fascinating.
guys. Thanks.